talked about automation. We talked about some of the challenges of automation, multi-vendor versus single vendor. But what about some of the benefits of automation, right? So we talked about, we never really hit on that. If as a network engineer, as a NetOps engineer, what would be the most beneficial to you as NetOps? Taking away the company management, they have all these great ideas that may or may not come to fruition, but down in the trenches, what is really going to be of value?
That's kind of an interesting dichotomy, right? Because what benefits the business isn't always completely aligned with what benefits the NetOps person in the trenches. I can tell you that speed is what the business needs and wants, right? We have to get to market faster. I work for a software company, and when you have a new thing you want to push out, in the old pre-automation, pre-agile world, if you had to build infrastructure and order circuits and get all that connectivity in place for this new application, that could easily take 2 to 6 months, depending on how backed up telco is, and do they have fiber out there, and do they have to trench? So I see the value of speed for the business. And listen, if the business isn't succeeding, right, I don't know how long they can afford to pay me. So, we have to serve the business. Speed seems to be the biggest advantage. And I'll give you an example. Back before, so the company I came from built an automation platform, open source, Ansible Python, right? And when we would stand up new gear at a site, you can just put some variables in a YAML file, call a Python script, and in 10 seconds, you have hundreds of lines of config that you can just drop in a box and be done. So that's fast. The better answer to your question, how does it help a NetOps person? Fast is good for me because it could take me 3 full days, 24 working hours to write a 500-line config. And not only all that time and pain and staring at the keyboard and getting headaches over it, but the automation stuff seems to be much less error prone than I am, right? It's all there in code, and I just need some variables, and then it puts it all together in this magical automation machine and spits it all out. I have made multiple mistakes over my career in configs. Zeros and ones matter in the config, and if you get anything off, it breaks. And I've broken things too, right? We all have. So, I think speed for the business is a huge advantage. I think speed for the operator who might not want to spend 3 full days writing a novel of a config. The way I have heard this whole automation, chant is, why would you want to be doing that low level stuff, right? Like if you could get a junior guy to put in an IP address and a routing domain name, whatever the variables will be, and then just press a button and config and ship that device for you, you can work on higher value stuff. Because I've had the title senior network engineer in my career, but I've been a config jockey. Like, I'm not really working on high value stuff. And that's been an interesting change in the industry is, the industry doesn't just want a person who is really good at writing configs line by line in a notepad. They would rather us, in discussions about how we can solve more important problems and, how can we automate? How can we go faster? How can we reduce outages? If your configs and your changes in your infrastructure is code, right? If you can do that in an automated platform and not a guy like me writing code, deploying it at 3 a.m. in a maintenance window when I'm exhausted, but actually have it all automated and use the intelligence of these automation platforms and these programming languages to kind of, I don't know if abstract away is the right term, but, get it out of my head and make it more, less error prone, faster to configure, faster to change. They all seem like really good advantages to me, kind of for the business and for the operator, because a lot of times those two things are different, but speed isn't necessarily bad for me because I'll tell you what, having a project manager breathing down your throat every day on a status call of why isn't this thing built yet? Because we got to go and deploy this application. If I can go from 3 days to 2 minutes to write that long config, throw it in a box and ship it out, then it makes me look better. People are happier with me. Maybe my bonus is bigger that year. So making the engineer faster, the NetOps person faster, I think benefits not only the business, but the engineer. I'm friends with this guy, Daniel, in Australia. He's a big guy in automation. And what he told me, I thought was interesting. He said, time is my greatest asset, right? And if I can do my job faster, more efficiently, I get more time to spend any way I want. And he chooses to spend it with his wife and kids and extended family, right? So doesn't that sound cool? What's the benefit of automation? Spending more time doing things you want to do and not in the minutia of writing config. So this is coming from a guy who wasn't necessarily happy when the whole automation thing happened, right? Because I tried to take computer science in college and ran for the hills. They put me in C++. I couldn't do it beyond my capability. And that was it. I'm like, well, I guess I don't get to be in IT. Took a circuitous different route, into network, engineering. And we didn't need, when I got my, my first certification in 2012 and got my first job in 2013, you didn't have to know any of that stuff. Right. And now, here we are 8 years later, and the industry, all the certification tracks, all the employers, automation is here. And it seems like it's going to be really difficult, if not impossible, to compete if your competitors are automating. If your engineers are taking 3 days to do something that another company's engineers can do in 3 minutes, and you're trying to get your new application or service to market faster, who's got the advantage, right? Not only in business, but in the guy like me who wants to spend more time with his wife and kids and maybe less time in maintenance windows and writing config. So yeah, right. I think speed and accuracy, I probably could have condensed that down into a 10-second answer, but speed and accuracy, I would think.
That's good though, because, some things come out of that, like, the whole point that it's not just about the network, it's about life, right? The automation helps you live a better life. And another thing that kind of came out of that is, as you said, when automation first came out, you weren't too impressed with it, right? Because it was different. You were already doing your thing, and it was, extra work. As you mentioned quite a bit earlier, it was extra work that could have been on nights and weekends to try to learn the stuff. So that's a challenge, absolutely. But, kind of at the end, you brought it around to, if your company isn't automating, they're at a competitive disadvantage to, like companies.